I want you to try a little experiment the next time you're just sitting on your couch.
Oh, I like experiments.
Yeah, so just picture the most terrifying, absolutely edge of your seat horror movie scene you can possibly imagine.
Right.
You know the kind. The killer is creeping super slowly down a dimly lit hallway.
Hmm.
The victim is hiding in like a slatted closet.
Breathing heavily.
Exactly. Breathing heavily, eyes totally wide with panic. The tension is just unbearable.
Sure.
Now imagine watching that exact same scene, but grab your remote and mute the volume completely. Just zero sound.
It totally changes it.
It's suddenly not scary at all. It's actually kind of ridiculous. I mean, it's just two actors running around awkwardly in the dark, bumping into furniture.
Yeah.
And that right there is the invisible, almost magical power of the soundtrack.
It really operates as the ultimate puppeteer of our emotions. I mean, we tend to think we're engaging with a primarily visual medium when we watch a film or a video.
Because we're literally watching it.
Right, but our physiological and emotional reactions are frequently being entirely dictated by the acoustic information entering our ears.
Well, welcome to the deep dive. We have a truly fascinating stack of source material for this one. We are looking at a comprehensive 45-page academic review paper.
That's a big one.
It is. It's titled Mood Music, Studying the Impact of Background Music on Film. And this was put together by researchers Charles Spence from Oxford University and Nicola Di Stefano from the National Research Council in Italy.
And what they've done here is just provide a phenomenal synthesis of decades of research. They basically gathered a century's worth of experimental psychology, cognitive science, and film theory.
To figure out what?
To figure out the exact mechanisms of how music acts on the human brain during visual media consumption.
And our mission for this deep dive is to uncover those specific, scientifically proven mechanisms by which background music manipulates our brains, alters our memories, and literally changes our perception of visual reality.
It's wild stuff.
For you, the listener, whether you're a dedicated film buff, a casual binge watcher, or just someone who spends way too much time scrolling through social media feeds, get ready for some serious aha moments.
Definitely.
Understanding this is going to forever change the way you watch movies, TV shows, and even those 30-second algorithmic clips on your phone.
To really understand how this manipulation works, though, we need to introduce a core psychological concept from the paper. It's called sensation transference.
Sensation transference.
It sounds like dense academic jargon, but the underlying idea is something you have experienced countless times. Sensation transference happens when the mood, the tempo, or the emotional weight of the background music basically bleeds into the visual content.
This is like a spillover effect.
Exactly. The feeling of the audio essentially infects the viewer's perception of what they are watching.
Okay, I have to play devil's advocate here for a second, though. I mean, isn't it a bit obvious that sad music makes us feel sad?
That's the common assumption, yeah.
Right. Do we really need a century of cognitive science to tell us that a depressing song makes a movie scene feel more depressing?
Well, that's exactly what early film theorists were trying to figure out in the 1920s. And it goes so much deeper than just feeling sad. When synchronized sound and speech were first introduced to cinema...
Like the 1927 release of The Jazz Singer.
Exactly. When that happened, there was actual documented panic among prominent film directors and theorists.
Wait, panic over adding a soundtrack.
Total panic. Innovators like Sergei Eisenstein and Rudolf Arnheim were deeply concerned about this new technology.
Why?
They worried that the immersive realism of combining sight and synchronized sound would cause massive sensory overload.
Interesting.
In their view, true art required a certain level of aesthetic distance. You needed space to think about the images.
Like you're observing a painting.
Exactly. They believed that pumping emotionally prescriptive music directly into the theater would overwhelm the audience's perceptual faculties. They thought it would essentially turn them into mindless feeling machines rather than critical observers of art.
Wow. And the source material has this incredible historical anecdote about Eisenstein that perfectly illustrates how visceral and powerful early audiences found this combination.
The Battleship Potemkin story?
Yes, Sergei Eisenstein directed the famous 1925 silent movie Battleship Potemkin. The actual visual footage of that film, the physical celluloid depicting the story of a naval mutiny, was approved by government censors across several European countries.
The images themselves were totally fine.
Right, deemed acceptable. But a year later, in 1926, Edmund Meisel composed an accompanying musical score for the film, and the authorities banned the music.
The censors literally found the music too provocative.
That is insane to think about today.
It is. The visual of immunity was something they could tolerate, but the music imbued those images with a revolutionary, driving emotional power that authorities found genuinely threatening to public order.
So the audio transformed a historical depiction into an incitement.
Exactly.
It really makes you realize how much we take for granted today. But eventually, the film industry obviously stopped panicking and started weaponizing this effect.
They leaned into it.
Big time. The paper highlights Stanley Kubrick as the prime example of a director who fundamentally shifted how we use this psychological tool. He completely changed the game in his 1968 masterpiece, 2001, The Space Odyssey.
Kubrick recognized that music didn't just have to be decorative. The legendary Hollywood story is that Kubrick originally commissioned the renowned composer Alex North to create a traditional original film score for 2001.
Right.
But during post-production, Kubrick made the incredibly jarring decision to toss North's entire original score out.
Just threw it in the trash.
Gone. He replaced it with pre-existing classical pieces by composers like Richard Strauss and György Ligeti.
Which must have been deeply insulting to Alex North.
Oh, absolutely.
But creatively, it was a massive leap.
It was a paradigm shift. Before this, film music was mostly there to tell you how to feel. You know, sweeping strings for a kiss, fast horns for a chase.
Very literal.
Right. But by using stark, recognizable classical pieces, particularly against the vast, silent backdrop of space, Kubrick shifted music to being an essential intellectual driver of the narrative.
Yeah, the waltzes spinning alongside the space stations.
They weren't just background noise, they brought intellectual baggage. The music became a character itself, demanding the audience think about the juxtaposition of human history and the cosmos.
Okay, let's unpack this. Because it's one thing for a visionary director like Kubrick to intuitively know that music manipulates our intellect and emotions, but it's another thing entirely to prove it in a laboratory setting.
Which is where the science comes in.
Exactly. How do we know this isn't just subjective art critique? The source material details some fascinating modern experimental psychology that proves just how easily our visual reality is hacked by audio.
The transition from film theory to hard cognitive science really gives us the data here. If we want to look at how music dictates reality, we should look at how it changes our interpretation of completely ambiguous situations.
Right.
There was a classic study in 1994 by a researcher named Bolivar and colleagues.
The wolf experiment.
Yes.
They had participants watch a video clip of two wolves interacting with each other in the wild. If you just watch the footage in silence, it's somewhat ambiguous. The wolves are jumping on each other, showing teeth rolling around.
And this is where sensation transference becomes measurable. When the researchers played friendly, lighthearted music over the video, viewers reliably rated the wolves' behavior as playful.
It's two dogs playing.
It was interpreted as just two animals having a good time roughhousing. But when the researchers took that exact same visual footage and played aggressive, intense music over it, the viewer's interpretation completely flipped.
Because of the music.
Suddenly, they perceived the interaction as a vicious, dangerous fight. The visual data entering their retinas did not change by a single pixel, but their brain's fundamental interpretation of reality was entirely rewritten by the audio track.
So the music doesn't just color the mood. It acts as a filter for intent. But what about when we already have a deeply ingrained prejudice, say an instinctual evolutionary fear of a predator? Can music override a survival instinct?
That is exactly what a massive 2016 study by Nozel and their team wanted to find out. They recruited over 2,100 participants for this.
That is a huge sample size.
It is. They had everyone watch a 60-second clip of sharks swimming, taken from the incredibly high-quality Blue Planet documentary series.
And we are culturally trained by movies like Jaws to be terrified of sharks. When you see a shark, your brain expects an ominous two-note cello progression.
Which is exactly what the researchers tested first. When the clip was paired with ominous music, the viewers rated the sharks highly negatively. They saw them as menacing, deadly, and frightening.
Naturally.
But here is the critical finding. When they paired that exact same footage of swimming sharks with uplifting, positive, almost majestic music, the viewers evaluated the sharks positively.
No way.
Yes. Sensation transference completely overwrote their natural, instinctual bias against a marine predator. They suddenly saw the sharks as peaceful and beautiful.
That is wild. We are literally willing to ignore our own survival instincts if the background music tells us everything is okay.
It's powerful.
But what's fascinating here is the V2 study from 2001, because this moves beyond just changing our current feelings. and looks at how music alters our predictive logic.
This is a crucial distinction in the research. V2 had viewers watch a scene from the classic 1945 Billy Wilder drama The Lost Weekend. The researchers split the audience. Half the participants heard the original movie score that accompanied the scene. The other half heard a substitute track, which was Samuel Barber's Adagio for strings.
For context, if you aren't familiar with classical music, Barber's Adagio for strings is widely considered and often explicitly called the most depressing piece of music ever written in the Western world.
It really is.
It is a slow, mournful, devastating piece of music.
Intensely sad. So after watching the scene, the researchers stopped the film and asked the participants to write down what they thought would happen next in the plot. They had to predict the future of the narrative.
Right.
The group listening to the original score wrote fairly standard, neutral predictions based on the visual cues.
But the group that listened to Barber's depressing music wrote drastically more negative, tragic, and fatalistic continuations of the plot.
Exactly.
The music didn't just change their mood while they were watching. It actually altered how their brains calculated the future. It shifted their entire logical framework for what was possible in the world of the film.
It shows that we don't just passively experience a soundtrack. We use it as active data to build our expectations. We're constantly acting as detectives, gathering clues.
Yeah.
And the mechanics of how we gather those clues get even more granular when we consider where the music is supposedly coming from within the world of the media.
Right, this is the difference between diegetic and non-diegetic sound. Let's define those terms for the listener really quickly using a relatable analogy.
Good idea.
Diegetic sound is audio that the characters inside the movie can actually hear. Imagine a character walks into a coffee shop and there's a pop song playing softly from the ceiling speakers. The character can hear it, we can hear it. That is diegetic.
In the world of the story.
Exactly. Non-diegetic sound is the traditional cinematic underscore. It's the sweeping symphony orchestra that only we, the audience, can hear. The characters have no idea there are 50-string instruments playing while they kiss in the rain.
Keeping that distinction in mind is vital because there's a brilliant study from 2017 by Tan and colleagues that isolated this exact variable.
I love this one.
They looked at a chase scene from the sci-fi movie Minority Report starring Tom Cruise. In the original scene, Tom Cruise's character and a female character are hurriedly making their way through a crowded shopping mall, trying to evade the police.
Standard action stuff.
Right, but playing quietly in the background over the mall's public address speakers is a gentle ballad, specifically Henry Mancini's Moon River.
Because it's playing over the mall speakers, it's diegetic. The characters are hearing it as they run.
Exactly. The researchers took this clip and altered the audio mix. They kept the exact same gentle music, Moon River, but they increased the volume and removed the environmental echo of the mall.
To make it sound like a soundtrack.
They mixed it so it felt like a traditional, non-diegetic cinematic underscore. Suddenly, it sounded like the director put the music there just for the audience rather than it just being coincidental mall music.
This is the part that really stuck with me, because the music itself didn't change at all. Right? The notes, the tempo, everything was identical. But simply changing the implied source of the music from in-world mall speakers to cinematic underscore completely altered the viewer's interpretation of the scene.
Completely.
With the non-diegetic underscore, viewers thought the characters were less tense, less suspicious of each other, and they even perceived romantic interest between them.
It's amazing.
The music tricked our brains into inventing romantic chemistry out of thin air, just based on where we subconsciously thought the music was originating from.
It proves that our hearing is deeply analytical. If we think a song is just playing on a radio in the background of a scene, we filter it out as environmental noise. It's just trash data.
Just part of the room.
But the second our brain categorizes the music as an underscore, something the director intentionally layered into the film for us, we assume it is a secret key to the character's internal souls. We immediately assign it deep narrative meaning.
Here's where it gets really interesting. What happens when the director intentionally messes with that analytical process? When the music explicitly does not match the visuals at all?
Right. Researchers actually have a term for this deliberate mismatch. It's called crossmodal counterpoint. You can think of it as intentional, artistic incongruency.
The paper gives some iconic cinematic examples of this. Think of the graphic, hyper-violent shootout in the action movie Face Off, which the director chose to set to the soothing, gentle sounds of Somewhere Over the Rainbow.
A classic example.
Or the brutal home invasion scene in A Clockwork Orange set to the upbeat tune of Singin' in the Rain. Or when Hannibal Lecter violently escapes his cell in The Silence of the Lambs, and the horrific bloodshed is paired with the delicate mathematical grace of Bach's Goldberg variations.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, we have to ask why a director would choose to break the natural rule of sensation transference. Why not just put scary music over a scary scene?
Right.
The answer is that a deliberate mismatch creates cognitive dissonance. When you pair horrific, visceral violence with a beautiful, delicate aria, it forces you, the viewer, out of a state of passive consumption.
You can't just sit back and absorb the emotion, because your brain is sounding an alarm that something is wrong.
Exactly the point. It demands active intellectual processing. Your brain subconsciously asks, how do I resolve the conflict between what my eyes are seeing and what my ears are hearing?
It forces you to engage.
It elevates the scene from a simple emotional reaction to an intellectual puzzle, which often makes it far more memorable and disturbing.
But there's a massive caveat to this technique noted in the research. Context matters immensely. This kind of artistic emotional mismatch really only works in the realm of fiction, where we have an unwritten contract with the filmmaker that we are there to be entertained or challenged.
Yes, and we see the limits of this in a 2013 study by Copias and his team, who tried to apply this emotional underscoring to real-world factual media.
Oh, this was fascinating.
They took a factual television news magazine report about the dangers of toxic substances in energy-saving lamps.
Super dry stuff.
Very dry. They tried putting various types of emotional background music behind the journalistic reporting.
And it completely failed. Viewers just found it highly inappropriate, and it had no positive effect whatsoever on their reception of the information.
The researchers concluded that fiction invites emotional immersion, which allows the music to bypass our critical faculties and manipulate us. But factual news requires a state of critical reflection.
That makes perfect sense.
When we're in an analytical state trying to absorb objective facts, an emotional underscore suddenly feels manipulative or entirely out of place.
If you were watching a local news report about a city council meeting regarding zoning laws, and an ominous driving cello starts playing in the background, you're immediately going to wonder what the news producer's hidden agenda is. The illusion is broken.
It breaks the trust required for factual reporting. We accept manipulation in art, but we reject it in information.
This brings up a huge question, though, one I'm sure you, the listener, are probably pondering right now.
Right.
We are constantly bombarded by media today. TikToks, YouTube Shorts, Instagram Reels, targeted video ads.
That's everywhere.
Almost all of them feature aggressive, carefully selected, algorithmic background music. If we are exposed to this constantly, are we becoming immune to it? Have we built up a psychological tolerance to sensation transference?
That is a very valid concern, and it was actually formally proposed as the habituation hypothesis by a researcher named Ben back in 1999.
Okay.
Ben claimed that the psychological effectiveness of background music was dropping by roughly 8% every single decade because of our sheer overexposure to it in daily life.
8% a decade. If that math held up, by now, we should be basically completely numb to the effects of background music. We should just be ignoring it.
We should be, if the hypothesis were true. However, the science says otherwise. A much more rigorous, comprehensive meta-analysis conducted by Kempfa and colleagues in 2011 looked at a massive dataset and completely debunked Ben's claim.
Totally debunked it.
They found absolutely no general trend of habituation. We are absolutely not immune. In fact, despite our constant daily exposure to underscored media, we are just as susceptible to sensation transference today as those audiences in the 1920s who panicked over the musical score of a silent film.
We are still just as easily hacked by a good chord progression.
This raises an important question for the immediate future. If we aren't immune, how will this psychological leverage be utilized as media evolves?
Yeah.
We are rapidly moving into emerging domains like virtual reality, multisensory marketing, and deeply immersive digital environments. The tools to pair audio with visual stimuli are only becoming more sophisticated, and our brains are just as vulnerable to the manipulation.
So what does this all mean? Let's bring all these threads together for you. Background music is not just a decorative layer. It is the invisible director of your media experience.
Absolutely.
It dictates whether a character is likable. It tells you exactly how to interpret a seemingly neutral situation, like whether wild animals are playing or fighting, and it even fundamentally alters your memory.
The memory aspect is huge.
The paper highlighted a fascinating 1991 study by Boltz, which showed that when music actively violates our expectations, like playing upbeat, happy music during a tragic scene, it actually improves our long-term recall of those specific events because our brains had to work significantly harder to process the mismatch.
It serves as a phenomenal subconscious mechanism for memory encoding.
I want to challenge you directly with an exercise. The next time you are sitting on your couch, watching a targeted ad, sitting in a dark movie theater, or just mindlessly scrolling through a video feed on your phone, try to decouple your senses.
Just actively listen.
Actively listen to the music and ask yourself, what is this specific cello or this upbeat pop song telling my brain to believe right now? Are you actually seeing a fight on the screen, or are you just hearing an aggressive chord progression? You might be shocked to discover how often your eyes are simply following orders from your ears.
That is a brilliant way to build media literacy. And I want to leave you with one final provocative thought that builds on a very brief mention in the paper regarding the impending future of AI-generated scoring.
Oh, this is going to be good.
As we discussed, humans have a documented visual dominance. We linguistically say we watch a movie, treating the music as a secondary, almost accidental backdrop.
Right.
But imagine a near-future scenario, and the technology for this is already here, where you are wearing a VR headset equipped with biometric sensors.
Okay, I am picturing being fully immersed in a digital environment.
We already know from the laboratory that a simple pre-recorded orchestral track can make over 2,000 people suddenly feel affection for a deadly shark.
Yeah.
Now, what happens when an artificial intelligence is dynamically generating an adaptive real-time soundtrack based directly on your live physiological data?
Oh, wow.
It's tracking your heart rate, monitoring your galvanic skin response for sweat levels,
Yeah.
watching your pupil dilation.
It knows exactly how your nervous system is reacting to the visuals second by second.
Exactly. If the media ecosystem can measure your anxiety drop by drop and instantly synthesize the exact acoustic frequencies and chord progressions needed to manipulate your emotions before you even consciously realize you are being hacked.
Who is really directing your reality?
Are you autonomously experiencing the visual world, or are you just a biological instrument being played by an algorithm?
Wow, a perfectly scored existential crisis to end on. Thanks for taking this deep dive with us. Keep your eyes and your ears open.